Welcome back, guys. This is Dana from Masterland Investing. First of all, thank you guys for tuning in. I hope you're all having a great week. I've had an awesome week. I've had some good conversation with some real motivated people. Once again, I've listened to some good videos. Actually watched some good videos. Just been around some really positive people this week. And, when you're around good people, positive people, it just makes you feel good. Anyways, what I want to talk about today is something you hear quite often in the real estate arena, actually around real estate agents and brokers. It's called the 90-10 rule. The 90-10 rule is basically what they're talking about is 10% of the realtors get 90% of the work and do 90% of the business. Why do you think that is? I'm sure most of you have a good idea, but typically it goes back to work ethic. Pertaining to the land business, it's the same thing, or any business, whatever you chose to pursue. If you have your own business now, whatever it may be. A lot of people may say, well, that realtor, that business, he got lucky, he was in the right place at the right time. I disagree. It's all about positioning yourself, having your tools in your box, not being afraid to take a chance, be able to leap in when you have the knowledge and you see the opportunities there. Going back to land investing, it's very similar. The ones that do the most business are the ones that are willing to work at it. When I say it doesn't mean you need to work 20 hours a day, 7 days a week and not have a life. I'm constantly talking about, possibly getting into this land investing business if you decided to have new opportunity in your life. And the reason I got into it was because of the freedom of time I had. But if you're going to pursue the land investing business, then like anything, try to do it as good as you can, be as good as you can, and if you're going to do something, you might as well try to perfect it as much as you can. A lot of these people in the real estate business, they picked out a certain niche in the market, and they really work it. For instance, with land investing, find a particular farm area, really learn that craft, narrow it down to what type of, if you're going to do wholesaling, you're going to do owner finance properties, and really refine that end of the business. And then be specific in your target areas, your farm areas, what type of property you're going to go after, and perfect the business. And as far as the realtoring goes, and the same thing with land business, the ones that are turning and burning are the ones that are working the streets. They're shaking the trees, they're hitting the pavement. And once again, that doesn't mean you got to do it 20 hours a day, but the time that you put in, be smart about your time. Like I always say, be creative, think outside the box. For instance, if you pick a particular farm area and you do a mailer, you get information from the county, a list of tax delinquent property owners, or even a list of just out-of-state owners, or just across the board, owners of vacant land in a particular farm area, don't solicit that area once. It's recommended, and I found it works more effectively, if you hit it every 3 or 4 months. I wouldn't recommend doing it and then right behind it sending another list of the same people. But what I've learned from experience is people's mind change, circumstances change. It's almost like targeting on Facebook. If you're running an ad for a business or whatnot, or building up a relationship with somebody, you may meet them the first time. They liked you, they liked your personality, they thought you were a nice person, but they really you can't build up trust with that person over one meeting. So I found it to be true with the solicitations, and it's worked for me. If you hit an area, a particular farm area, you've targeted a particular area, you know your niche market, send out the postcard or the letter every 3 or 4 months, and do that for like maybe a year. And you'll see the difference, because what will happen is the first time you'll get maybe out of 1,000, you might get a handful, maybe 50, 60, 40 calls. Out of that, you might end up closing 3, 4, 5 deals. That's a good return ratio. But I refer to postcards because I know they stick around longer. I typically use what I call my perfect postcard, which is a 3-color postcard, glossy, 2-sided. I believe they stick around much longer than a piece of paper or a letter, and it's easier to find when you have a recall and you want to maybe call about that the property you own, you want to see what they're willing to pay. But if you do it every 3 or 4 months for maybe 3 or 4 mailings over time, you might catch that one person that wasn't interested the first mailing. Possibly they got the mailing and lost the mailing. Something was going on in their life. They were busy. One of the kids cleaned it up. Or maybe just got tossed in the trash and they don't know how to get a hold of you. The market's evolving just like it is with the bricks and mortar end of it, the real estate business, as far as realtors and brokers. The ones that are succeeding are the ones that evolve over time, and they're willing to constantly stay creative, think outside the box, try to think like that potential seller or buyer, and come up with ideas to stay relevant in the marketplace. So that's one example. Do your mailers. I would recommend doing a colored mailer. Some people may disagree, and that's fine, but it's worked for me, and I stick with things that work. Another thing is I've learned also that, obviously like any business, the land investing business get a little more competitive. Believe me when I tell you, there's enough out there for a lot of competition. And competition's good, but you want to be on the high end of the market, meaning you're doing some good numbers, even if you're only putting a little time in each week. And I think to be successful, like I say, think outside the box. I've often said, once you establish the value of a deal, you're around 20-25% of the retail, and that's your offer to a potential customer. I might have said it before, I think I did in the video, that if you get a customer and you're offering, for instance, 5 on a property that might be worth 20, and you got their ear, they're interested, but you can't strike a deal because you're off by a little bit. From my experiences, and I talked about this before, is don't be greedy. If you can find a happy medium, there's enough meat on the bone to make it work. In your margins, don't be greedy and try to maximize every deal. You might have to go to 7-8 grand maybe if there's not a lot of back taxes owed, and maybe you're doing a self-close and your upfront costs aren't going to be too high. There's still enough wiggle room to pick it up at 7 or 8. Pay a little money to get the deal done, maybe a title search. So maybe you're at 987, something like that, and put it back on the market a little cheaper if you got to move the stuff. Like I tell you, young guys or young people just getting in, don't try to squeeze every bit of blood out of that stone. If the market's at 20 and they're moving at a fairly rapid rate, move that stuff quick and put on there at 15, 16 so you know you're the first one out of the gate. Another thing that I've learned, and it's like the same thing I say, thinking outside the box, being creative, is when you're marketing these places and you're turning around to sell property, try to include all those wonderful attributes to that particular area. If you're in a position and you got some cash already stacked up, or you're starting out and you have a little cash, maybe your niche is buying property and turn around and selling owner financing. The reason I say that is because it gives you a lot more wiggle room on your price on the buy end. So say you establish the value is 20 and you're going to try to buy them at 25%. So you're going to try to buy them at 5, 6 grand, and you can't strike a deal. They want 10. Well, guess what? You got their ear. You know the retail's 20. My advice would be to try to strike a deal and get it maybe at that 10. Because if you're doing owner financing, you're going to make your money on the other end on your interest rate and over time. So it's a win-win in your case. You're going to create passive income over time once you recover the initial cost. If they're smaller in properties, a lot of guys preach buy these ones at 500 or grand. What I've done is I've picked up some at 500, put them back on the market at 500 down. I've got another 100 too in the initial buy. So out of the gate, if somebody buys it owner financing, I may be down 200, and I'll structure a deal over the next 30 months at 100 a month, so it's affordable, no credit check. So within a couple payments, the first 2 or 3 months, you've recouped all your initial investment. You dump that into another owner finance property that you picked up, and you just keep the ball rolling. It's a great way to build up passive income. And like I've said, it's a numbers game. So being creative, another thing I've suggested before is if you do one-on-one calls with people, and I really recommend this guy, especially starting out. If you're doing high volume, there's been times I was moving, shaking trees, rock and rolling so fast, there wasn't enough time a day to deal with every potential seller. That's different. But if you're doing small volume, it's a part-time gig, you're just starting out, or even if you just chose to do it part-time, do the one-on-ones. I'm telling you when I tell you guys, it works much better. You can hire a service, you can hire a VA company, that's great. But nobody can sell it, nobody can talk like you can. This is your baby, your business, you're the brand. Like I've said before, you never know what will come up from a one-on-one conversation. So many times, guys and girls, I've got some great deals where, listen, Dana, I got this property where you sent me the postcard, but I own a bunch more if you're interested. Well, you typically ain't going to find out about that if you're having somebody else do your calls because they don't really care. So the one-on-one, I got off the phone with a guy today. I'm looking for some people for some stuff I need done. And a lot of conversation back and forth via text. I'm a little old school in this sense, but I make sure I let everybody know if I'm interested in maybe hiring them for a service, I'd really like to communicate one-on-one on the phone. And my feeling is I can build up a much better rapport on the phone. It's easy to translate what I'm looking for on the phone. And most importantly is I can get a feeling of that person on the phone. You can get a better base on what they're all about. You can hear their tone in their voice. There's a lot missing in translation when you're doing a lot of texting. Excuse me, guys. So that's another way when you guys are starting out, or even if you've been in business a while, I recommend doing the one-on-one. There's nothing wrong with that. And you definitely got to call the person back immediately. If the market isn't cranking, then set a time that you're going to call in the evening when you catch your breath. You've got home, you get in your office or your quiet space, and you got a list of a half a dozen or a dozen people you need to contact, get back to them about their response to a particular postcard or a letter you sent them. This way your mind is clear, you're not rushing to get on and off the phone, you're not delegating that service to somebody else and they're not taking it serious, they're not passionate about it. They don't understand that you've got money invested in every call is so important to make the deal. Another thing I stress too is if you can, let them know who you are, what you do, and what you want to do for them. Let them understand that you want to make this process easy. There's no stress. When you start asking questions, ma'am or sir, how long have you owned the property? A lot of this information you'll know prior if you've checked out a small mailing list, but typically you get the list, I get a name and a mailing address, and I'm targeting a particular type of property, so I'll solicit, I'll get the calls back. I don't know the parcel, I don't know their background, I don't know how long they've owned the property. So ask the right questions, get a little inquisitive. How long have you owned the property? If you don't mind me asking, I haven't looked at it in a bit. What are the taxes on that property? You're starting to instill some stuff, some of the reasons they've called in the first place, why they might be intending to possibly sell, why they might be motivated to sell. If you ask questions like, what would you do with the money if you sold, if you don't mind me asking? What's happened to me in the past is when you ask that question, you may find out that what they want is a trip. What they want is a down payment for a boat. When you get that information, it's so valuable because as far as the trip end of it, if you book a trip in advance for someone and say, listen, if we can strike a deal, I'll do you one better. How about I get you and your wife a round trip ticket to such and such, and you can save yourself a lot of money. You book it in advance, maybe 90 days out on the closing, and you got some time to get a discount price through a travel agent or online. So I guess what I'm trying to say, guys, is think outside the box. The reason the 10% of the realtors do 90% of the business is they target a particular farm area, they sell themselves, they brand themselves, they typically work harder when they're working with anybody else, and they're continually reminding those people in that farm area, here, I'm here to help you guys, I'm available if you need me, and that goes back to the postcard rather than a letter. You can do the letters, it's a little cheaper, but do the 3 or 4 month process. Send it out, make a note of it. Another thing I've learned too is, and I didn't do it for a long time, I try to do it now, and typically I try to practice it. I'm not always the best, like everything, I'm not the best at anything, but I'm sharing this stuff with you guys, stuff that I've learned from my experience. You farm an area, you send out a solicitation of 1,000 postcards, for instance. You get back 60, you get 30, you get back 60 calls and you convert to 4 or 5 sales. Well, those 60 calls, a lot of times you're going to get stuff like, Well, Mr. Brown, you offered me $5 grand for the property. I wouldn't sell that for less than 50. Well, what you do is you have your notepad out when you start getting these calls back. That's what I typically do. And you take notes of the person, the conversation, and what kind of numbers they're looking for. And a few years back, I was doing one particular, and I regretted that I didn't take good notes because at the time I determined my buy price was 7, the value was around 18, so I was paying pretty good money. What happened was I did a handwritten mailer to 300 or 400 people, I guess. I got about a dozen responses back, and some of the people that responded they said, we'd sell it for 10, we'd sell it for 11, we're not interested in selling now, maybe in a few months, we got some plans. I didn't keep track of the return mails, I didn't keep track of the phone calls, and shame on me because it wasn't soon after, the market was fairly flat, so I think at the time I said, I can still move these things, make a couple of bucks, it'd be a good little farm area. Well, what happened was, like I always preach, keep your ears and eyes open and understand where you're at in the 4 phases of a real estate cycle. This particular area started to crank. And it wasn't a year later that those same properties that I was offering 7 for, and they were worth 18, went up well over the mid to high 20s. Had I kept that notepad and information on those people that were saying, I'll sell it for 10, I'll sell it for 11, get in touch with me in a few months, I might be interested, things are changing in my life, we're moving, but I'll get back to you, get back to me. Those would have been aces in the hole, I'm telling you. I would have paid the price, and I would have made money at that 11, 12, 13, and maybe the ones that told me to call back when things change. I mean, I racked my brain on that. It was something that I shared with you guys because I learned from that experience. But remember that 90-10 rule, and remember the reason that happens is because it's not luck. They weren't handed that opportunity, like I always say. They're willing to work for it. They found a niche market, like I always say. Pick out one particular aspect of this land investing, and even if it's speculative long-term, become very good at it. Become a master at that particular part of the land investing business. Educate yourself, refine that technique, and when you do put the hours in every week, be willing to put the time in and be as good as you possibly can. And like I've always said, build a relationship with that farm area. By sending out mails every 3 or 4 months, they start to remember. And what happens is I've had people in the past say, I lost the first postcard. I'm really glad you sent me another one because I was racking my brain. I was ready to sell. The first one I put on the table, and my daughter must have thrown it away. And I had one lady call me one time, a daughter. I think I talked about it from like 2 years earlier. This happened a couple years ago. It was that same area I'm referring to that I was offering 7. By the time she got a hold of me, I think we sold the property at 20. I bought it at 7. She happened to find the letter. It was one of the handwritten ones. And called me back and said, "Are you still interested?" Actually, I was sending a handwritten letter with a 1-page contract. So it was a blind mailer, more or less. So they had a 1-page purchase agreement in hand. She goes, "How's that work?" I said, "Go ahead. Who's on the deed?" She says, "My mom." I said, "Go ahead and have her sign if she's interested. Stick it in that return envelope, which I think I sent you." She said, "Yes, you did." I said, "Shoot it back to me. I'll get the deal done and she'll have her money soon enough, as soon as I get the title cleared and get my title company on it." Turned out great. So remember that, guys. Repetition. Realtors do so well because they establish themselves in certain farm areas. That homeowner understands that, oh, Mary or John, that's the realtors doing all the work. They sold the neighbor's house. They sent us a gift at Christmas. It doesn't hurt to even think outside the box, and possibly on your mailing list, you have the mailing address. Send them something during the holidays, because what you're doing is you're building up a relationship with these people. They may not want to sell today, but when they decide they may want to sell, who are they going to think of? They're going to think of you, because you're the first one on their list that's been attentive. Sent them a couple, 3, 4 postcards over time. They remember your name. That's why the Pepsis and the Coca-Colas of the world, you'd think that they have the market share, but there's new people coming around every day, new kids being born, new generations. They need to keep it in the people's mind. Who's the #1 soda? Same thing in business, same thing in marketing. Remember that, guys. Keep your brand in front of your customer. Know your farm area. Perfect that niche market. Don't be afraid to think outside the box. Think like the seller. What do they need? Ask questions. How can I help you? By the way, if I decide to buy your property, interested in selling, we can strike a price. Let me tell you, Mr. Smith or Mrs. Smith, I'm going to do all the work. I'm going to make this easy for you. It's easy as 1, 2, 3. You don't have to do anything. As a matter of fact, the price I'm going to quote you, that's exactly what you're going to get. If you have back taxes, we'll figure it out. I'll take care of that. I don't want you guys sweating. You guys have been struggling long enough with these properties. I'm going to make it easy for you. I'm going to help you out. I'm a problem solver. So let me check out your property and get back to you. Now, you can't do that if you have somebody else doing the deals for you. Believe me when I tell you. Your time is valuable. You're spending good money to get these people to call, to solicit to these people. So that's the lesson for the day, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please subscribe. It helps me a ton. Like I've been saying recently, please ask questions, guys. If you guys want to be a student, you're interested in getting the course in the near future, God willing, the creeks don't rise, it should be available, the course to purchase within the next 2 or 3 weeks. Don't hold me to it, but we're getting real close. I've got people going ahead and completing the course, entering into the software. So we're getting real close, guys. Believe me when I tell you. But please subscribe. Please hit the like button if you haven't already. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm constantly trying to pump out some great stuff for you guys. I know I may go off track as far as directly on land investing, but everything I come up with, I think it's pertinent. It's good information. And if anything, it may just help you going forward in the future, making different decisions. Might not be the land business, might be another opportunity. It doesn't matter to me, guys. I just want you guys to have a happy life and succeed in whatever you do. So thanks again, guys. Go out there, be generous with your time. Try to inspire someone if you can. I look forward to seeing you soon. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.